Hey there, I'm Harry Enten, and today we're counting down the top 10 key groups that voted for Donald Trump back in 2024, but have shifted against him as he goes underwater. And we're going to start with the smallest movement and build our way up to the biggest movement. And we're going to do so looking at the pure data, the raw numbers, baby. So let's start off with Generation X, which I often feel like gets ignored, right? We talk about millennials, we talk about Gen Z, we talk about the baby boomers. But Generation X was the most Trumpy generation. He won him by 7 points back in 2024. But down he goes now to minus 12 points on the net approval rating. That is a 19-point shift away from Donald John Trump. I dare say he has a bit of a St. Elmo's fire on his hand. I'm sorry, I just love all those movies back from the 1980s. Of course, another key group that voted for Donald Trump back in 2024, in which we saw a similar shift, is men, male voters. We talk about a gender divide in politics. Women vote for Democrats, men vote for Republicans. But now even men have turned against the President of the United States. Look at this. Going from plus 12 points, that was his win back in 2024 over Kamala Harris. And now his net approval rating, minus 7 points. Again, we're talking about a 19-point shift away from the President of the United States. Male voters are saying, That's my Dikembe Mutombo when it comes to Donald John Trump. Now, an even bigger shift that we're seeing is amongst suburban voters. You win in the suburbs, you'll win elections. That's how it works in the United States of America. You look at Fox News polling back in October of 2024, look at this. Donald Trump had a small lead, very much matching what he won by nationally, pretty much so. Look at that, a 2-point advantage. But look at this. In the suburbs, minus 20 points now in the net approval rating for Donald Trump, at least as recently as late March. We saw that in the special election last week, right? New Jersey's 11th district, a lot of suburbs there, went heavily for the Democratic candidate by about 20 points. So we're seeing this movement actually show itself down ballot. Now, a slightly bigger shift, but one is very much in the news right now, given the war of words between Pope Leo XIV and Donald Trump. Catholics. This was such a big component of Donald Trump's coalition back in 2024. Look at this. He won Catholics by 20 points. But now, even before Trump and Pope Leo butted heads, Trump was underwater, down into the Dead Sea. Look at this. Minus 4 points. That's a 24-point shift away from the President of the United States. Now, if we're looking at a group that had a very similar shift, remember, back in 2024, it was all about young men, right? Young men moving away from the Democrats, moving towards the Republicans and Donald Trump. Well, they're shifting back again, because take a look here. Men under 45 on Trump. In 2024, Donald Trump won him by 5 points. Look now, though, the net approval rating, minus 19 points. Again, that is a absolutely huge shift away from the President of the United States. We're talking about, again, an over 20-point shift away from Donald John Trump. Now, an even bigger movement, again, talking about groups that traditionally had been Democratic, but in 2024 saw massive shifts towards the Republican Party and Donald Trump. If we look at men of color, back in October of 2024, according to Fox News polling, Trump led, although it was within the margin of error, but still led by 1 point. Look at him now. According to Fox News polling. We're talking about Donald Trump, 26 points underwater with men of color. This is a 27-point shift away from the President of the United States. Now, an even bigger shift. How about voters in households making under $50,000? This was a historic win for Donald John Trump. You never really saw this in past elections, but he actually won voters with under $50,000 in income back in 2024. He won them by 2 points. But now you can wave that movement. Adios, amigos. Goodbye. See you later, as I channel my inner Jack Buck. He was an announcer back in the 80s and 90s and early 2070s as well. He broadcast for the St. Louis Cardinals, for those of you who don't know. Also did a lot of great national games. Either way, look at this. A plus 2-point Trump win, a historic win for him, with voters making under $50,000 back in 2024. But down he goes. Look at that. We're now talking about his net approval rating, negative 27 points. That is a nearly 30-point shift amongst this key group that had shifted into the Trump column. An even bigger shift, though, is this one. Look at this. We're talking about white men with a college degree. This was a group that was a key pivotal group that, again, we saw a big movement from back in 2020 to 2024, and we saw it in the Fox News polling. Look at this. In October of 2024, Donald Trump had a 15-point advantage over Kamala Harris amongst this group. But look now. Oh boy, this is no bueno. He is now 16 points underwater as of late March. That is an over 30-point movement away from Donald Trump. So now we've gotten into the 30s in terms of the shifts away from Donald Trump, how far he's gone underwater. Now you think this is a big one. How about married folks? Married folks, right? Those who are not married, traditionally Democratic. Those who are married, traditionally Republican. But they're not on Donald Trump's side anymore. Take a look here. Okay, it turns out that the marriage of Donald Trump and married people, it turns out that that marriage is not blissful at all. Because take a look here, married voters on Trump. In the 2024 election, take a look here. Donald Trump won this group over Kamala Harris by 14 points according to the exit polls. Look at the net approval rating now. Minus 18 points. That's a 32-point shift away from the President of the United States, according to UMass Amherst polling. And I will, of course, note that those who are unmarried are even worse off when it comes to their feelings towards Donald John Trump. So Trump isn't winning married folks or unmarried folks. And I got news for you. It's one of those two options. One of those two options. You either want to be in one group or the other, or wish you were not in either one of those groups. Sometimes I know how it is in relationship. No, I'm not saying anything here. But either way, we're talking about a 32-point shift away from Donald John Trump when it comes to married folks. Lastly, the biggest shift of all, and this one is the true shocker, folks. So if you stay tuned through this part of the video, thumbs up to you. Everyone should have, but the payoff is really big, because just take a look here. Okay, we talk about the Donald Trump coalition, the group that he gained so much ground amongst back in 2016, the big shift away from 2012, white voters without a college degree, white voters with no college degree. And back in 2024, you jump ahead from 2016 to 2024, look at this. Donald Trump won this group by 34 points. Woof. Look at an average of the recent polling. Even this core group of Donald John Trump's coalition, he is now underwater with, look at this. He's now -2 points on the net approval rating. That is a 36-point shift away from Donald John Trump. And that means very bad news. And that is why Donald Trump is hitting all-time record lows when it comes to his second term. And that is a big reason why Republicans are going to be in such big problems in the midterm elections if, in fact, these numbers hold, because a lot of these groups that have turned against Donald Trump will be turning against Republican members of Congress as well. Folks, if you like what you saw here, make sure that you leave a comment underneath, because that way I can know what I should be covering in the future. Shalom, folks.